Hey Merfolk fans, I'm Joe. Thanks for joining me. I'm here with round one of a modern friendly league. I lost the die roll, so I'm going to be on the draw this game. Let's go ahead and have a look at the opening hand. So these are always annoying hands because they're close to being keepable. We've got two good creatures, but then 5 lands. So if you imagine this as a mulligan to 6, let's get rid of the Wanderwine Hub. We've got 4 lands and 2 creatures. That's probably a keep with a scry, but it's not a keep we're happy about. So from this position, I think it's easy to take a mulligan to 6 because then of course we still get the scry after that. So the hand has even just going down to 6. A lot of opportunity to improve from where it is right now. So the opponent chose to keep. I chose to mulligan to 6, and this hand looks a lot better. It's a little bit slow. There's no AEther Vial. There's not any interaction. But it's going to be a keep, and we're going to scry that land to the bottom. We'll have plenty of opportunities to draw into a 4th land for Master of Waves between now and turn 4. So that can go on the bottom. Hopefully we draw, more Merfolk instead in the meantime. So the opponent's opening with Temple of Deceit, and we know pretty much right away that they're on Ad Nauseam, which makes me feel a little bit worse about keeping this hand. Though in game 1 against Ad Nauseam, I don't really have much that can interact with them. I have Echoing Truth, which can bounce Phyrexian Unlife, potentially just sort of kill them on the spot if they're at a negative life total. But game 1 is usually really, really hard against Ad Nauseam. So they scried and they put a card on top. So after keeping 7, they kept their scry on top. Things not looking good for the Merfolk. So for my turn, I drew another Master of Waves, super slow. As I mentioned, I pretty much know for sure that we're playing against Ad Nauseam already. No turn 1 play, pass back to the opponent. So they play a Swamp, and then Pentad Prism on 2, they are ramping their mana. And for our turn, we draw AEther Vial, very clunky. So we'll just do our best to hit our curve. Here's a Lord of Atlantis, pass back to the opponent. Let me zoom in on this guy. Dreadship Reef. So this is, I think, called a storage land. It makes colorless mana at any time. Excuse me. You can pay 1 and tap it to put a storage counter. And then you pay 1 mana and remove a bunch of storage counters, and you can add any combination of blue or black. So if they are not quite ready to go off and they're not using their mana, they can use, on each turn, they can put an extra storage counter on this, and they continue to ramp themselves each turn. So let's go ahead and keep clicking through here. Opponent plays nothing on that turn. So I drew a 3rd Master of Waves. So easy choice to play Reejerey here and swing for 3. Opponent doesn't do anything, goes down to 17. They're going to put a storage counter on this land. And then they go for Spoils of the Vault, naming, let's see, Spoils of the Vault, naming Ad Nauseam. So they could have potentially died there on Spoils of the Vault, because Spoils of the Vault, let's see, it says name a card, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal the name of them. Put that card into your hand. Exile other cards revealed this way. You lose 1 life for each of the exiled cards. So he went through, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he went through 8 cards to get to Ad Nauseam. But now that he has that in hand, with us tapped out, things are looking pretty terrible. So he's starting to add different color mana to his mana pool. We see Angel's Grace, followed up by Ad Nauseam. I don't have a Pact of Negation, and I would lose to it next turn anyway. So we can go ahead and just play this out now. He's going to draw his deck. We can go ahead and go to the revealed card zone here. Going to see card after card being added to the revealed card zone. So I haven't seen any other win conditions in Ad Nauseam for a while other than the typical Lightning Storm and Laboratory Maniac. Here's the Laboratory Maniac. What happens with this guy is if he has any extra blue mana, he can play the Laboratory Maniac and then cast a Serum Visions, which says draw a card. And once he's drawn his whole deck with Ad Nauseam, he has 0 cards. Laboratory Maniac says if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So Serum Visions basically wins in the game that way. That comes into play if I would somehow like exile their Lightning Storm, since they only run one of them in the deck. They have a backup win condition with Laboratory Maniac. Ad Nauseam used to test different versions, I think, like different win conditions. I forget what they were, but other red, it might have been Conflagrate or something like that. But people seem to love Lightning Storm, which is good for us because we have Kira in the main deck, and I have an extra copy in the sideboard. And she's basically like an uncounterable counter for Lightning Storm, because if we have Kira on the board, they cast Lightning Storm, we can just pitch a land and redirect Lightning Storm to any one of our creatures, and then a Kira counter trigger goes on top of the stack, and no matter how many more lands they pitch to Lightning Storm, that Kira trigger is somewhere in the middle of the stack, and before it gets down to Lightning Storm resolving, Kira's trigger will resolve and counter the Lightning Storm. So Lightning Storm definitely something that Merfolk is equipped to handle, but clearly not in this particular game, right? So I'm just playing through the replay here. The opponent is, I guess, resolving Lightning Storm triggers at this point. I'm not quite sure why the replay is going so slowly. Okay, so I think he was still drawing the last cards. No, he's just... So the Lightning Storm triggers have to resolve. It's going to put a whole bunch of counters on Lightning Storm. It's got 28 counters plus 3, so it's like 31 damage. I go from 20 to negative 11. So that's game 1. Typically we have a lot of good spells to bring in against Ad Nauseam. I've got 3 Dispels, 3 Negates. Well, actually, I want to mention that I made a tiny adjustment to my sideboard. I brought in a 3rd Dispel and took out one of my Tidebinder Mages. Tidebinder Mage comes in against decks like Burn and against decks like Blue-Red Kiln Fiend. Obviously, against Infect, Tidebinder's great against all those decks, but against all those decks, I think Dispel is even better. And Dispel does well against combo decks like Ad Nauseam and also against control decks. So Dispel just seems like a better all-around spell than Tidebinder Mage. So right now, instead of having 3 Negates and 2 Dispels, I have 3 Negates and 3 Dispels. Brought all 6 counterspells in against Ad Nauseam for game 2. So let's go ahead and check out the... Oh, what did I do there? Looks like I clicked like to go ahead a turn. I kept my hand. It looks like it was a 1-lander and AEther Vial. So I played Wanderwine Hub, revealed an Island Walk Lord, and cast AEther Vial. You can see we have a Dispel in hand to help us against Ad Nauseam. That is an instant. Opponent plays another Scryland. And again, they put the card on the top. So we're hoping to draw land here. AEther Vial goes up to 1. We draw another AEther Vial, which is sort of like land. We get our creatures out onto the board faster. So opponent has suspended a Lotus Bloom, so that's ticking down. Darkslick Shores and Pentad Prism on 2. This is exactly like last game, except now they have an extra Lotus Bloom on suspend. So both of the AEther Vials get a counter here. And for my turn, looks like I drew a land. So I don't expect the opponent to go off next turn, so they're going to use the mana right now to cast a Master of the Pearl Trident, try to get some power onto the board. Lotus Bloom, going to continue ticking down. That will resolve next turn. Okay, so they're hitting their land drops, playing Sleight of Hand for some card selection. Follow up with Phyrexian Unlife, so I'm taking 1 counter off the Pentad Prism. So opponent still has 4 cards in hand. Had a Scryland, had a Sleight of Hand, has a Lotus Bloom on suspend, already has Phyrexian Unlife established. So we're falling pretty far behind here already. We'll bring in the Master of the Pearl Trident. Actually, you know, it might have been a slight misplay to bring in the Master of the Pearl Trident. I should have probably brought in Harbinger of the Tides, I think. Because then I can bring in both of my lords this turn. I'm sorry, yeah, I could have brought in the Master and Merrow Reejerey, and then I would have had been swinging with a 4/4 and a 5/5 instead of two 4/4s. So, small difference. I don't know that it's made a big difference in the game, but the lords are always one power less than the other non-lord creatures, the other non-lord 2-power creatures like Harbinger. So both of my AEther Vials are going to get ticked up. We have a Dispel in hand to sort of give us some time, and we just drew into a second Dispel. So even though the opponent has gotten off to a really quick development, and we're going to expect them to want to go off next turn, we've got plenty of protection. With AEther Vials up, we have no reason to tap our lands, so we've got 2 blue sources and 2 Dispels. So going to bring Merrow Reejerey in here and swing for 8. As I mentioned, could have possibly been swinging for 9, but we can see if it would have made a difference in the game or not. So opponent goes down to 12. Lotus Bloom is going to come off of Suspend now. So there it goes. It's an island. And since Ad Nauseam is an instant spell, they can just pass the turn, and if they want to go off, they can go off on my turn. They still have 1 counter on Pentad Prism, so there's 5 mana. Phyrexian Unlife is protecting their life total, and they've got an extra Lotus Bloom in reserve. So end step, I'm going to bring in Harbinger of the Tides. I currently have 12 power, which will take the opponent down to 0. It's a 2-turn clock as it is because we have to get to 0 and then 10 poison counters. That's what Phyrexian Unlife says. All damage is dealt to you as though its source had infect. But still, they could have like Slaughter Pact or something to kill one of my lords, in which case I'd still be attacking for more damage next turn with Harbinger. I had no reason not to bring Harbinger in now, basically. I'm going to choose to leave these because these are the mana costs of our lords, and Master of Waves doesn't really do very much right here. So we drew Akira, which would be super amazing if we had a land in hand. I was going over earlier how that works with Lightning Storm. If I activated AEther Vial, I have to imagine the opponent is not savvy enough to go off with that on the stack, and I've got counter backup anyway. So really wish I had an extra land in hand right now, but I can go ahead to combat, trying to get the opponent down to 0 so that we can try to attack for lethal next turn. The opponent's casting Darkness here. This is the Black Fog, prevent all combat damage. Now, I've got redundant Dispel, and I really want to get the opponent to 0 this turn so we have a chance to win next turn. If they have a Pact in hand, Pact of Negation, to counter a Dispel, then I still have another Dispel to back that up. Although I might just let that resolve. They would go to do Ad Nauseam maybe this turn or next turn, and I'd have another Dispel. So I decided to use one of my Dispels on this. Opponent cracks his Lotus Bloom. Let's move this so we can see his floating mana. And it looks like he's going for Ad Nauseam here. So it's a good thing we have another Dispel because he's set to go off here. Blue mana for Dispel, but the opponent keeps tapping mana. So Spoils of the Vault. This card is sort of insane with Phyrexian Unlife because at this point he can name any card in the deck that he wants, and he won't die from it because Phyrexian Unlife says you can't lose the game for having 0 or less life. So what do you guys think he's going to get here with this? Pact of Negation to hit my Dispel. It's sort of insane that at this point Spoils of the Vault with Phyrexian Unlife, it just acts as a 1 mana counterspell. So they're digging for Pact of Negation. They found it after like 2 cards or something like that, or 3 cards. So Pact of Negation, targeting my Dispel, that's going to get countered. Ad Nauseam will resolve. And at this point, he's just going to draw his deck with Ad Nauseam. And the same stuff is going to happen again. It's a little bit crazy that if I had just an extra land in hand, even through all of that insane interaction the opponent had with instant spell after instant spell after instant spell through 2 Dispels, I still could have countered the Lightning Storm with Kira. So we do have game against Ad Nauseam, especially post-sideboard. Unfortunately, in this round, in this particular game here, the opponent just had a perfect hand. He had a Fog, he had Ad Nauseam, and he had a Counterspell to back up his Ad Nauseam. So a little bit rough. The opponent is currently just drawing his deck. He's down to 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 cards. So we'll look at the revealed cards. Nothing different here. We can see what he sided in. He probably sided in more Pacts of Negations because he expects us to have counterspells. So here's Lightning Storm again, and I don't think I waited for it as long this game, just because I saw that the opponent knows the deck well enough to actually go through the sort of technical Magic Online things that are necessary to make sure that Lightning Storm resolves correctly. So unfortunately we lost round 1 to Ad Nauseam. I did my best. We had 2 counterspells in Kira, but the opponent still got the best of us. Pretty insane hand for them that game. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about the matchup. My extra Dispel in place of my 3rd Tidebinder, I'm actually feeling really good about it. The main reason that I made that substitution was because I think Dispel is better than Tidebinder Mage against Infect. Infect, the real threat that they have is Blighted Agent. I mean, also Inkmoth Nexus, but that requires greater mana investment from them. And also we have Spreading Seas to deal with Inkmoth. So we can block their Glistener Elf. We really want to be able to counter some of their crazy pump spells. And Dispel does a better job countering their game plan than Tidebinder Mage, I think. But the extra Dispel, excellent to have against these kinds of combo decks. So as I said, feeling great about that swap in the sideboard. So please tune in for the next video for round 2. Thanks, guys. Bye.